Welcome to ASA Live. We are streaming this ASA Live from On Aging 2021. And with us today is Michael Adams, who is ASA's board chair. But today he is visiting us in his sort of day job capacity. Michael is also the CEO of SAGE. Michael, welcome to ASA Live.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be here.
Michael, I have to ask you, how's the conference going for you?
It's been amazing. You know, I've had the opportunity to attend and be a part of so many different sessions, and they've really been extraordinary and rich. I particularly loved earlier in terms of today. It was a great session today with Seth and Lauren Rogan with HFC and their incredible work around Alzheimer's. Just a lot of really rich content.
You know, we've been really fortunate this year to have such rich, diverse content from perspectives that we don't normally get at our annual ASA conference. So we've just been really fortunate to be able to get so many varied voices represented at the conference, and I'm glad you're noticing. Absolutely. I'm glad all our members are enjoying it.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, fantastic.
So we're here today to talk a little bit about the Equality Act, which we'll get to in a second. But first, Michael, would you mind sharing with our ASA viewers a little bit about the work that SAGE does?
Sure. So SAGE is the country's and actually the world's largest and oldest organization that focuses on improving the quality of life of LGBTQ older people. We focus on direct services and policy advocacy and training, providing cultural competency, or what's sometimes called cultural humility training, for a broad array of companies and partners. And we're a 42-year-old, or actually 43-year-old organization now, headquartered in New York City with affiliates in 30 cities in 22 states and Puerto Rico. Among other things, very proud to be a close partner with ASA. And apropos of what we'll be talking about today, one of our really active and vibrant programs is our federal policy advocacy program, which is run out of our policy office in Washington, D.C.
You know, so much of the work that our Aging Network does is not independent of the policy and advocacy effort. And I think what I'm really excited about, and you made this announcement last week when we launched On Aging, is ASA's new policy agenda. And we've sort of, in classic DC parlance, have had to sort of identify places where we'll lead, where we will partner, and where we will collaborate on, because we care about so many issues on aging. One area in particular that we want to focus on is on increasing access to healthcare and greater health equity. And I think it's fair to say, Michael, that there is a good amount, a fair amount of discrimination out there with respect to older adults in regards to healthcare, as it applies to healthcare, but also in other contexts. Could you sort of frame the issue for folks who may not be aware?
Sure. So certainly in the context of older folks who are LGBTQ, what we see at SAGE and our work and what the data shows are, you know, really unfortunately high levels of discrimination. And quite a bit of that comes in the context of elder care, unfortunately, whether it is in residential care or in home care settings. We see discrimination of a whole variety of forms against LGBT plus older adults, and there've been a variety of reports documenting this, so much so that many older people from LGBT communities often report that they feel compelled to go back into the closet in order to protect themselves, in order to protect themselves against this kind of discrimination. And then related to that, related to the elder care context is housing discrimination, which is really, really rampant against LGBTQ older people. In fact, there was a study done several years ago by the Equal Rights Center that documented that 48% of LGBTQ older adults who apply for senior housing are subjected to discrimination in the application process, never mind what actually happens if they manage to make it through the application process. So discrimination in care, discrimination in services, discrimination in housing, these are all really serious challenges for many LGBT plus older adults. And of course, if you take an intersectional approach and think about the fact that many LGBT plus elders are also people of color and are simultaneously dealing with discrimination based on race, that just makes the problem that much more challenging.
That's right. And I think one way that Congress is trying to solve for this, as well as the fact that the states, it varies by state as to whether there are protections in place for these older adults who self-identify as LGBTQ+. Something like 29 states lack these basic civil rights protections, so much so that Congress passed, or at least the House has passed, something called the Equality Act. Could you give us an overview of that?
Sure, and I'm really glad, Peter, that you're lifting up something that many people don't realize, because the vast majority of Americans believe that discrimination against LGBT plus people is wrong. And in fact, most Americans think it's already illegal. But as you indicated, in most states in this country, there are not laws prohibiting this discrimination. So the Equality Act, which is a federal proposed law, is extremely important to extending anti-discrimination protections to all LGBT plus people, including older folks in LGBT plus communities. And what the Equality Act would do in a nutshell is it would take the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which protects women and people of color from discrimination, and it would extend that to include LGBT plus folks as well. And really ensuring that everybody, that all Americans are just have the basics, right? Have the right to apply for housing, apply for a job, get government funded services, go into a restaurant or a store without having to worry about discrimination. So in a nutshell, that's what the Equality Act does, or would do if it was enacted.
So there are, as with any legislation in Congress, there are opponents to this legislation. Some, like the Heritage Foundation and others, sort of view the Equality Act as a bit of a penalty or an infringement on one's religious freedoms and religious beliefs about things like gender and a variety of other issues that the Heritage Foundation has identified. And I'm wondering, how does this square with what the Equality Act is actually trying to do?
Well, this issue gets raised, this issue of so-called religious freedom, and it really is a red herring. Look, of course, freedom of religion is extraordinarily important. It's important to all of us. It's constitutionally protected. There's absolutely no question about that. And we respect that. And the Equality Act does not seek to penalize anybody's religious beliefs, and it doesn't penalize anybody's religious beliefs. It does not limit churches' abilities to believe what they want, or synagogues or mosques' abilities to believe what they want, to teach what they want, to instruct what they want. What the Equality Act stands for is the notion that well, of course, we are all entitled to our religious beliefs and to hold them dear. What we're not entitled to do is to impose those religious beliefs on somebody else. And what we're not entitled to do is to take those religious beliefs and use them as a justification to ignore and disregard anti-discrimination laws that are simply designed to protect all Americans. And so there is no infringement of religious freedom here. This is really a red herring, where the Equality Act would simply provide the same rights to LGBT plus folks as it provides to everybody else, no more and no less. The same rights that are provided to women, to people of color, no more and no less.
And the examples you were giving earlier aren't hypothetical. In fact, it's the subject of a Supreme Court case, if I'm not mistaken, because, well, we know because the ASA has joined an amicus brief in support of the issues involving one's ability to receive services. I think the issue is one's ability to receive services against this, I'll call the Heritage Foundation argument about religious freedom. Could you tell us a little bit about that Supreme Court case?
Sure, sure. Well, and the context here is that we do see discrimination sometimes being justified based on religious beliefs. So I'll give you an example. There's an older lesbian couple in St. Louis, Mary and Bev, who several years ago applied for admission into a continuing care retirement community, CCRC, in St. Louis. Very large community, very well respected, affordable for their budget. They went through the entire process. They qualified in every way, and then at the last moment, their application was rejected, and it was rejected on the grounds that their relationship, their marriage, because they were married, was not a biblical marriage in the eyes of this provider called Friendship Village. And that as a result of that kind of biblical lack of recognition, according to this provider, this couple was denied access. That case actually was litigated, and ultimately they reached an agreement in which, in fact, that discrimination was unlawful, and so that couple was given the opportunity to join that CCRC. So we see with this discrimination, these incidents of discrimination are sometimes justified on religious grounds. What's going on in the Supreme Court case that you're referencing, Peter, is the case is called Fulton v. City of Philadelphia. And what it involves is the city of Philadelphia's public and publicly funded foster care system. The city of Philadelphia has a law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. And the city says, not surprisingly, that any entity that receives a contract from the city of Philadelphia, that receives city of Philadelphia tax dollars, has to abide by the city's laws, including the law that prohibits discrimination against LGBT plus people. And what's happened in that case is that a Catholic social services organization accepted a contract to participate in the public foster care system, but insists that even though it is receiving tax dollars, that even though it's publicly funded, because of its religious beliefs, it should be allowed to discriminate in its foster care services and refuse to place foster kids with same-sex couples or with LGBT people more generally. And that case is before the Supreme Court now. We'll see what happens in that case. Obviously, we have a much more conservative Supreme Court majority than we did previously, thanks to several appointments during the Trump era. And the case has been argued, and it will be decided in the next several months. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
In the meantime, the Equality Act is a live, active bill, if you will. Can you tell us a little bit about the status of it?
Sure. Well, we have the best chance that we have had in many years to get the Equality Act enacted. We have a pro-equality president, President Biden, who has indicated his strong support for this legislation and his enthusiasm about signing it if it gets to his desk. The House of Representatives passed the Equality Act a few weeks ago, and it is now in the Senate. We had our first Senate hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee a couple of weeks back, and now we are working our way, hopefully, toward gaining the Senate votes that we need. Because of Senate rules, our goal and our need is to attract 60 votes. So that would require us getting every Democrat plus 10 Republican votes, and that's what we're working toward. It's a tall order, and we're optimistic that we can achieve it. The vast majority of Americans in this country, well more than 70% of Americans, support this very kind of legislation and anti-discrimination protections for LGBT plus people. And we're optimistic that we can win our way to that 60 votes, but obviously in this extremely polarized environment that we're operating in, it's going to take a lot of hard work.
And it's going to take a lot of hard work from a number of parties and partners. And I'm delighted to share, as we announced last week, that ASA has joined a coalition to advance this important legislation. Can you describe who else is part of this coalition and what we all will be doing together?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a huge effort underway to get the Equality Act passed. And by the way, that effort is essential because there is very strong organized opposition, including from conservative religious forces on the other side, who, as we speak, are inundating Congress with phone calls and letters against equality for LGBT people. So this campaign that SAGE and ASA and many other organizations is part of is crucial to a victory for fairness. And so what we have is we have various parts of the campaign. 16 national civil rights organizations, LGBT organizations have joined forces on a steering committee for the Freedom and Opportunity for All campaign. And then we have hundreds of organizations, very importantly, including ASA, who have stepped forward and said, we believe that LGBT plus folks should be treated fairly and should be treated equally. And we're willing to step up to the plate and take action to see that come to life. So there are literally hundreds of organizations that are participating in this. I'm so proud that ASA has taken the lead as a national aging leader in stepping up, because this law is very important to LGBTQ older adults. Not only do we have to, we have the discrimination that I described earlier, there's particular language in this bill that would specifically protect older Americans from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. So it's so important that ASA is part of this, and I'm thrilled that we're working together on it.
I am too. This shouldn't be difficult. This is about the ability of older adults who we care about getting the services that they want and need and have the opportunity to live fully empowered lives. And so we should not be in the business of putting up obstacles to these fundamental civil rights. So I'm wondering, Michael, how can ASA members get involved? Let's put your ASA board chair hat back on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the most important way to get involved right now at this very moment is to call your senators and ask them to support the Equality Act. And there is a simple way to do that, which is to go to sageusa.org/equality time. That's sageusa.org/equality time. And you'll be able to click on a couple of buttons and quickly, directly call your senator and let them know that you want them to vote in favor of the Equality Act. So that's the first and really important step right now, because as I mentioned, they're hearing a lot from those who are opposed to equality and opposed to fairness. And so it's really important that they hear from our ASA members as well in support of the Equality Act. And then we also, there's a lot of other activity that people can undertake now as well. And to learn about other steps you can take in the broader campaign, there's a website called passtheequalityact.com. That's the website of the whole campaign. And you can learn how you can undertake other activities as well. But first and foremost, please make that phone call. And if you need assistance doing that, go to sageusa.org/equality time.
We'll be posting both those links in our chat here in just a minute, and folks should be able to quickly find the links on our conference platform as well. So, Michael, listen, thank you so much for joining me today on ASA Live to discuss the Equality Act, to discuss ASA's commitment to supporting the Equality Act. I'm just delighted you joined us. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Absolutely. Good talking with you.